Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Nurses for the Kingdom challenge during Nurses Week. I'm Tina Baxter from Baxter Professional Services and the Nurse Shark Academy. And I want to say thank you to those of you that are tuning in for today. As you were here, if you were here yesterday, we talked about the book of Proverbs, and we looked at how the book of Proverbs can help us, encourage us as nurses, and how we're to conduct ourselves as nurses based on the wisdom that we can gain from the book of Proverbs. And so, just a quick recap, we work hard, we're honest, we don't eat our young, we encourage, not bring people down, we have compassion for the less fortunate, we advocate for our patients and ourselves, and we seek wisdom. And that was from the uh, book of Proverbs. So, today, I wanted to talk about the Beatitudes, and we're talking about Matthew chapter 5. And for those who didn't tune in yesterday, I just want to say the reason for this challenge is because there's been so much negativity around nursing right now. In fact, I just saw in Georgia that a law was passed that says you have to make sure, if you're a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant and you have a doctorate, that you tell your patients that you're a nurse practitioner and you're not a doctor. You're not a medical doctor. And I understand there can be some confusion for on the patient side, but you know what? I don't know a nurse practitioner anywhere that would go and say that they are a medical doctor, because that would be fraud. And again, I don't want to, this isn't the news show, so I'm not going to get into that. But with all that's happening in the world and happening to nursing, and right now, nursing seems to be under an attack, it seems to me. But there are so many good things in nursing. We're hearing about shortage, and low staffing. And I applaud all the nurses that are standing up for our profession. But there's such negativity around nursing right now. And I thought, and the Lord laid it on my heart, let's talk about something positive. Let's talk about how we impact the kingdom through our profession as a nurse. And so I wanted to look at the Beatitudes. And so we're going to start with Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. And it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs." And when I thought about that, is what does it mean to be poor in spirit? And it goes back to recognizing that we don't own anything, that everything is owned by God, our creator, and that he, as our king, owns everyone, and that we are ultimately dependent on him. And so it's recognizing that dependence on God. We recognize that we cannot do anything of ourselves. There's nothing that we own. It all belongs to the king. We surrender ourselves to him, and it's an act of humility. And so when I think about that, and I realize that it's so much bigger than just me. When I'm going to work and I'm taking care of my patients, it is so much bigger than just me, because what I do reflects the king. And so I can't do everything and be everything for everyone in my own self. That's not my role. But I recognize that I need to stay connected to the creator in order for me to help others. In James 4 and 6, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And I think that humility is something that nurses tend to do well. This is not Bash Doctors Day, but having worked with a lot of physicians, there's a difference between the physician, and I have wonderful physicians who are humble, who listen to their patients, but yet there's still others and nurses that don't. And so I think it's that walking that out, that being humble. And so we'll talk about that more in a moment. So verse 4 says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And I think about that as a nurse, because as a nurse, we are privy to the most vulnerable and intimate times with our patients. Often from birth to death, we see it all. And to enter into that space when someone is mourning and to be a comfort to them. for us to mourn with them. I find that such an honor to be able to comfort them with the knowledge that there's still hope, that even if that loved one isn't there, that loved one lives on in them and their memories. That loved one lives on in their child that they see every day. That loved one lives on, and that there's still hope. And to be a part of that, I was blessed to be able to work with in hospice care. And my whole goal when working with hospice was for the patient to have a good death. And what I mean by a good death, that we met their needs, that they were comfortable, but we also met the needs of the family. And so I think as nurses, we are privileged to be able to be with someone at that particular time. And I don't count that lightly. It's at that time that we can reach them and be vulnerable with them in our humanity. We all experience death in one way or another. It's something that comes for all of us, and there's a common experience that we have as humans when that happens. And so I count that as a privilege that we can be there and mourn with them in hope. Verse 5, blessed are the humble, for they will inherit the earth. And I got to thinking about what that means. So another version of that is meekness, and in Greek it means to be gentle or soft. And oftentimes when we think of nurses, we do think of gentleness and softness. But I also want to think about our gentleness and softness with each other, because remember, we talked about yesterday that we don't eat our young. We don't need to compete with one another. We don't need to lord it over one another. We look at media, and they put out nurses like Nurse Ratchet, and I'm sorry, but Nurse Jackie, nurses with hard edges. And yes, there's times when you have to be tough as a nurse. Don't get me wrong, you have to be tough. But there's a certain hardness that you don't want to have, where we still have to have a tender conscience, where we still have to know that we don't have all of the answers. And so we operate from that place of abundance. We don't eat our young, but we know that there's room for all of us. 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7 says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he might exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. We don't play favorites on the unit. If you're a kingdom nurse, we don't play favorites, but we treat each patient and each coworker with dignity and respect. I know that just because you're a charge nurse that day, you don't lord it over others. And I see that happen sometimes, where someone gets a little bit of authority and it kind of goes to their head. And so we have to be better leaders and better mentors and better coaches. And so if we would listen to some of these beatitudes, it would help us so much. Verse 6, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And when I looked this up, it says to hunger is to have an intense desire. And so we need to have an intense desire for what is right. Righteousness means to acquit, to vindicate, to restore to a right relationship. So as a nurse, we seek to aid our patients to have a right relationship with their health. We seek a righteous relationship with our peers in the spirit of collaboration. We don't, again, separate. We don't discriminate against our patients. We want to collaborate with our patient because it's a reflection of our relationship with our King, who that relationship then informs our relationships with others. So this is all about having that right relationship. And as we have a right relationship with the King, as kingdom nurses, we have a right relationship with our patients and with our peers. And that means we don't exploit them. We don't take advantage of them in their vulnerability, because we know that we are seeking for righteousness, right living, and to do what is right. And it's an understanding that our righteousness isn't our own, but it comes from God. And it's because of his righteousness that we can do that. That we thirst for it, we seek for it, we hunger for it. Verse 7, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. We're asked and tasked to extend grace to our patients, knowing that they are in the most difficult times of their lives. We take care of our patients, even ones that don't like us or treat us poorly. I think of the times where we've had a patient that may have called us out of our name. They were angry about something. And that certainly has happened in the past. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. I had a patient who, when I first met him, called me every name in the book. I had to look it up. He was addicted to alcohol, and he was struggling with that. And he was very angry. And it seemed that every time he was admitted to the unit, he would come, and I would be his nurse, and I would do the admission. And so we would go over this, and we would talk about what was happening with him. And about the third or fourth time, we developed a rapport. And to the point that this man came to me one day with his son because he wanted his son to get help. And he had questions about helping his son, who was also becoming addicted to alcohol. And I say that because that made such an impression on me, because I explained to him, I said, do you remember the first time we met? You cursed me, called me names that I had to look up because I didn't even know what they meant. He didn't remember that. What he remembered was the care that I showed to him. And so he felt comfortable coming back to me to ask me, how does he help his son so his son doesn't end up where he is? He had gotten sober and he wanted that for his son. I could have been angry. I could have not shown mercy in that instance. But what I saw was someone in need, and he was acting out of his hurt. We are the ones who extend mercy to the ones society says least deserve it, to the ones that are behind prison walls and in jail, to the homeless and the destitute on the street, to the ones that are addicted to substances. And this is our calling as a nurse. We treat everyone with dignity and respect, even if we don't agree with their lifestyle, we don't agree with their beliefs, we don't agree with their religion. We treat everyone with dignity and respect, and we extend mercy. Verse 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. We serve as nurses with the purest of intention, never to harm a patient. Although we're human and sometimes we make mistakes and sometimes we fail, it's never our intention as kingdom nurses to harm someone out of malice or anger. We don't punish our patients because they are too demanding or a nuisance. And these are things that we nurses know, and it should be ingrained in us. But too many times I see where someone's become an inconvenience, that dementia patient that asks you every hour when's dinner, or that patient that throws a fit because they can't get what they want at that time, or the one who's anxious in the middle of the night and keeps hitting their call light. We serve with the purest intention of heart as a nurse, as a kingdom nurse. We don't go in it to harm anyone. And if we make a mistake, we correct it as soon as we can. We try not to make that mistake again. Sometimes you catch us in our humanity and we say something we didn't mean. When I was a young nurse, I had a patient that would come to the desk and just stand there. And most of the time it didn't bother me, but this was in the middle of getting 2 or 3 admissions. I'm on the phone with the physician. I'm trying to have a private conversation with the physician, and she's standing there staring at me. And I finally just look up and just tell her in my frustration, go away. Just go away and sit down. I had to go back afterwards and apologize to her. That was in my frustration as a new nurse, new charge nurse, and people are coming at me. And at that moment, I could not attend to her needs. Never was my intention to hurt her feelings. Never was my intention to bark orders at her. But the mistake was made, and I immediately went to her and apologized. This is what we do. Verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. We make peace with our Creator and King. We make peace with our peers. We foster peace between patients and their families. As kingdom nurses, we promote God's peace in a world that is seeking to divide us. We can take our patients, no matter what their religious beliefs are, sexual orientation, gender identity, or anything else. As kingdom nurses, we are here to serve and to have compassion. And I don't judge what you come with. What I look at is, how can I help you and serve? And as kingdom nurses, we remember that these are people that God loves, and God loves his people. And so we need to love people as well. And in our coworkers, we don't spread gossip. We don't backbite. We don't turn on one another, but we support one another. This is what kingdom nurses do. And then lastly, verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. We do what is right, not what is popular, even if it costs us. And there have been times when faith can be tested, when something may not seem right. Somebody may suggest a certain course of action and it causes an ethical dilemma. This is something where we gather the team together to discuss and what we can do to help one another so that we don't create those moral injuries. And there are times when things happen and we see injustice and we have to speak out. There are times when we have to be the ones to call out bad behaviors, even though it may cost us friends and sometimes may cost us our job. But we have to be right and do what's right and what's not popular. Always acting in love, not in self righteousness, but acting in a place of faith and love. That's what kingdom nurses do. So when you see someone being mistreated, whether it's because of the color of their skin or the fact that maybe they come in and they don't look like you and they're covered with tattoos, maybe they're strung out in drugs, we don't treat people badly because of the condition that they're in. We become a healing balm. That's what we do as kingdom nurses. We are healers and we are there to help and aid. So I just wanted to remind us of what we need to do if we're going to represent our King well in the profession of nursing. Too much we have turned nursing into a job, a career, and that's wonderful. And yes, it is. But we must not forget that it's also a calling and it's a holy mandate on some of us. And so I hope that this was encouraging to you. Um, if you have questions or comments, please share them. Again, I just wanted to share my heart and what the Lord gave for me because I wanted to encourage nurses this week as we're getting our pizza parties and our little trinkets and whatever else this week. I want you to hear me and know that yes, you make a difference. And every day you walk into that unit, every day you walk into that patient's home, every day you pick up the phone and call them, every day you sit there and hold their hand, every day that you hold that precious little one, you are making a difference in a life. And you have a calling on your life to do so. And so I want to thank all the nurses out there that are serving, all the retired nurses that have served, the ones that have gone before us and has helped us to be trailblazers. I want to thank you. And so that's all I have. If you want to join in with the Nurse Shark Academy, we have some events coming up. And so we'll be happy to post that as well. But I'm just excited about nurses, and I love my profession. I love what I'm called to do. I'm a nurse through and through. And thank you for your time. Goodbye for now.